In this segment, we're going to take a look at the Edit Monogram tool. And that's found here on the left-hand toolbar. Now, what I'm going to do to start is I'm just going to clean up my desktop, and these are some lettering objects that we'd created in the previous segment using the Edit Text tool. Now, to select them all quickly and just remove them, perhaps what I could do is show, if you look under your Edit drop-down menu for Select All is also found by using the Control and A key. So you can call that hotkeys. So if I click on my click on my desktop or my keyboard, Control and A, it's selected all of the embroidery on my screen, and now I'm just going to hit delete on the keyboard and it deletes it all. So that's one way that you can quickly remove objects. Now what I'm going to do is click on the Edit Monogram tool. And what you'll notice in the tool options is it gives me the ability to choose font name, to choose the monogram template, and to type in my text. So I'll start with ABC. And maybe I'll put capitals. Oops. I just want to type in fully ABC like that. All right. And then choose a template. And again, there's 25 different templates that we could work with when we're making a monogram. So you choose a template, you choose your font, you type in your text, and then what you need to do is click and drag to place your text. And so it starts where I clicked, and then you'll notice that as I keep dragging, I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, I can stretch it out horizontally, or I can stretch it out vertically. So visually I get to determine the size and location and I guess sort of dimensions of this monogram. So I'll go ahead and let go now. And it places that monogram. Now, I still have the monogram tool available if I wanted to. I could left click again and do another ABC. So you can make as many of this particular monogram as you want. And when you're finished, if you come up and click on your rectangular selection tool, it will finish using the tool. Let's go of that tool. Selects the last object that you made. So that's the Edit Monogram tool. Now, I think something that's worth noting is that when you use this Edit Monogram tool, that one thing that you are missing, or that's different from using the new and the Monogram Wizard, which I'll do again in a moment, is the addition of borders and corner templates. That's not part of using the tool here. So if you go through the wizard, then you can have that whole concept of adding a border to it. But in here, you're specifically just going to type in your text. So I could type in DEF and choose a monogram template, and then go ahead and click and drag to put that down. So that's generally how the tool works to use it. Now, I am going to show using the new Monogram Wizard again at this point, but before I do, I'm going to just show you some of the different ways that you can transform these objects. So I'll select, I'll use my transform tool to select, and again I can click on it to select it. And because it's a monogram, it's all one object. So if I click on it, I select the entire group of letters, just like it was with lettering objects. Now, when I have it selected for transforming, I can do the same general transform modifications. So if I select on it and I choose to make it bigger on a corner handle, I can make it bigger. If I want to stretch it out, I can stretch it. Or if I want to squish it, I can squish it. If I want to rotate it, I could rotate it. If I wanted to change the slant of it, I can change the slant of it. So those are the same kind of transformations that we could always make using the transformation tool. But then we also have the ability to go to the Edit Shape Nodes option. Now when you go to Edit Shape Nodes option, again, we no longer have the same kind of modification. So in this case, one of the things that you have is the ability to, I guess first of all, each letter, so look at the D, and then there's the E, and there's the F, and each letter has a box around it. And for example, I could grab on the corner of this letter D, and I could change its shape. So I can actually see there's the angle, the handles that come on shape nodes, and I could change the shape of that object. I could right click over top of it and change that to be a line if I wanted to. So you have that ability to sort of reshape the letters by these boxes that they're on. Now, something else that you can do when you're in the edit shape nodes on a monogram, and I'll just zoom in really closely for this, and you can see right now that the way this sewing is, the E is over top of the D. And notice if I mouse over top of the place where the two letters join, that the letter that's underneath kind of highlights. So just as an example, if I put my mouse over that highlight and click, it makes the D over top of the E. Yet here the E is still over top of the D. So by doing that, I was able to, I guess, intertwine those two letters together, if that makes sense. So I was able to choose that I wanted the D to go over top of the E in that spot. Now, if you wanted to reverse it, I could do that too. Select it, go back to Edit Shape Nodes, come back and say, no, actually I think we'll put the E over top, but maybe up here we want the D over top of the E. So you can see how you can make these changes to those overlapping areas, and that's done using the Edit Shape Node option. So those are two different sort of levels of editing that you get for working with monogram shapes. And now one of the things I'm going to do is also show you, before I go back to the monogram sort of interface or the wizard, if I select this monogram object and then the tool options, see I still have the ability to change its template. So if I wanted to go from a totally different style of template, I could. I still have the ability to edit the text. I didn't want DEF, I wanted it to be my initials, THC. I can make that kind of a change. So I can still change the font. So because it's a monogram object, I can change all of these things and it's still one monogram object. Now, maybe I'll choose an overlapping one just to show you what happens. So we'll get one of those overlapping ones. So here we've got a lettering, and notice the H is over the C in this area. Now I'm going to select this and I'm going to right click over top of it and I'm going to choose break apart, similar to what we did with the lettering objects. So when I say break apart, now my lettering, it's selected all of these letters, but if I click to let go, and now if I use my selection tool and click on, for example, the letter C, you can see that it's been separated. The letter H and the letter T, they're no longer a monogram. They're three individual embroidery objects. And because they were overlapping, if I click on the C and just move it aside, you'll see that it's actually created this object based on the overlaps of that monogram, and that's why this letter C is actually missing all sorts of parts of the design, because it was meant to be, I guess, sort of interconnected with the letter H, right like that. Nevertheless, each one of these letters, if I was to choose the Edit Shape Nodes tool, now have all of the individual points of those letters, which could be selected and moved and or deleted, or new points could be added to the shape. So you can change these shapes, change it to a curve. So you have the ability to modify the shape of a monogram, but it's no longer an actual monogram shape. Whenever you use break apart, you break apart either the monogram or the lettering into what becomes individual embroidery objects, which you have the ability to make modifications to, just not in the same way as when it was originally a monogram. So remember, with a monogram object, if I edit it and choose Edit Shape Nodes, that's where I have the ability to decide about the overlaps of the objects and general shape changes. But if I break them apart, then I can select the individual letters and make even further modifications. So yeah, that's the Edit Monogram tool. Now what I'm going to do is say New and start a new design, and this time we'll go with the new monogram, and just look at the small difference. So the main difference is we now have the ability to add in a frame or a border. So we can decide the size kind of specifically. So if you said, okay, I really want to make a monogram and I need it to be, whatever. So let's say 8 centimeters wide by 4 centimeters tall. I want it to have my initials in it, and I want to have it to be in this style. And for a frame, I want to add in sort of one of these like corner styles, and then apply this to these 2 corners and say next, and finished. And so we can see that I've created a monogram that had a specific height and width, and it had a couple of corners. So that's how we created this. Now, I think this is also interesting. Now that I've created this monogram layout, if I select these corners, they become individual. They basically become like an individual embroidery object. They're actually a cluster or a small group of objects. In other words, it's even possible to take and break this apart. No, I'm wrong. It's not possible to break apart the corners. That's something that if you had like the full artistic sewing suite, then you would have, even further, I guess, editing capabilities. But in this case, we don't. But we do have the ability to select the monogram, and it's still a monogram. And so note that even though we use the monogram wizard to create it, we could choose the monogram template and change the monogram template at this time. We could change the letters in the template to be whatever you want it to be. So maybe I'll just go back to ABC. And so you have that monogramming capability to edit, even though we use the monogram sort of wizard at the beginning with a new monogram to create our monogram. After the fact, you can simply select on that monogram object and do the styles of editing that you always have with a monogram object. So yeah, that's how to use the Edit Monogram tool.